under the same roof, we share the love, embracing the differences like hand in glove. Spreading peace and joy, it's a beautiful sight. Together we shine in each other's light. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world share in love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Watching the World. News at Noon. It's so great to be with you guys today to talk about some things that are happening throughout the world, namely what's happening with Nancy Guthrie and so forth. Last weekend, as many of you know, I flew out to support Tasha K for her birthday event, and I had quite the experience with Expedia and American Airlines. If you would like to hear about those details, I did a member live last night. Go check it out. I think you would enjoy the breakdown. But today, I have some information coming out of Tucson, Arizona, in regards to Nancy Guthrie. As you guys know, I went out there to cover this case for over a week, and I might be going back. But there is a new development from a 911 call, perhaps. A dispatch call that's quite disturbing. When you listen to it, you'll hear some details that I didn't hear officially before, but somehow this information has come out. So let's get to it. Actually, when I get to this particular 911 call, it was put out by 857 Tucson, really nice guy. He covers the news locally out in Tucson, Arizona. Now, I don't know the authenticity of the video 100%, but it seems like it could be absolutely correct. Let's actually get to it. Let me go through this information. So I want you to keep in mind when this dispatch call is happening, there's two different conversations happening. So that's why it sounds a little bit confusing, but I'm going to try to break it down to you. We don't know fully what it's saying, but I think we have a pretty good idea. This is in regards to when Nancy Guthrie goes missing.
In 7-Eleven, that's returning to a Honda Accord, 1999, Arlene and Henry Guthries. It looks like the 20s, I don't know what it is.
Okay, so they're talking about a vehicle, and this is the dispatch, so they're taking different calls at the same time. And I think what's confusing is they're taking a call that's I think it's like a 1011 or something that's more like a traffic related call involving a Honda Accord. I think it's an older model, but simultaneously they're dealing with a report coming in. You could actually hear them talk about in regards to the Guthries. So we're just focusing on the Guthries. I do not believe that the Honda is attached to this incident that they're reporting in regards to the Guthries.
It could be a Honda Accord.
So that's the Honda Accord. Let's keep that out of the frame.
494.
594.
We're on the phone with the comp. She's saying that through the cameras, the suspects went in through the back.
Okay, so in this particular case, it seems that they're talking about Nancy Guthrie, and perhaps they're on the phone with the daughter. We don't know for sure, but they're saying that the suspect went through the back door.
The cameras were working. As soon as they got inside, the cameras stopped working.
So the cameras were working. So it paints the picture, although I don't know for sure. But from what I know from the case, what they just said in this particular call is that the individuals went in through the back door. And after they went through the back door, the camera stopped working. Okay. So if we put this together with everything that we know so far about the case, it appears that an individual from the church, and this is all, we're just trying to figure this out. All right. Speculating. The mother was supposed to not go to church, but she was supposed to do like a Zoom situation with a member of the church. She didn't show up, right? And even though we get two different times from the sheriff, he tells us at 11 o'clock it was reported about the daughter, perhaps from the daughter that the mother was missing. But then another time he says it was more like around 11:50, somewhere to that regard. So it's quite confusing because the sheriff gives us those two times. Now, we do know that the family arrived at the property before the police came. It seems like perhaps even they saw the blood at the front door. Okay. But it seems like if this recording is tied to Nancy Guthrie, which it seems, right? It seems that they were able to access the video before they went into the house. And so they saw in the video perhaps the individual go to the front door. But it seems like this is something we haven't heard before. It seems that the daughter is saying that these individuals went in through the back door and then the camera stopped working. So it seems like they didn't really enter the house because they don't know if the intruder is still there or the person that we've grown to try to understand maybe Nancy Guthrie was taken. Okay. So from this call, it seems that they're still outside. They want the police to come and check out the house because when they look at the video, they only see the individual going in because now the camera has completely stopped and they don't know if the individual has taken Nancy or anything to that effect. Let's get back to it.
If they're still inside.
So you heard that? We don't know if they're still inside.
Comp does want us to check the interior if we are able to.
Okay, so the family wanted them to check the inside of the house. So this is something that they're dealing with. This is separate from a simultaneous call about a Honda Accord. Actually, if you look up the code, I think it's like 1110, whatever it is, that's a roadside stop. But then they actually use a code for this incident as a break-in. So it's very important. We're going to go back through it again, but I'm just trying to break it down for you.
We need to make sure that the daughter is.
Okay, and then it says we want to make sure that the daughter, and then they cut off the video. So based on what I've told you, let's go back and listen to this video one more time before we move on and just try to figure out what could have happened here. Let's see.
Code 16. In Sam 11, that's returning to a Honda Accord, 1999.
So it's a 1999 Honda Accord, but this is a separate situation I went through this video like 100 times. This recording 100 times. Okay, separate incident, two things happening at one time. That's why people are confused.
Arlene and Hedy Guthries.
And you hear them say the Guthries, right? Okay, so this is in regards to the Guthries. There's no doubt about it. This could be a totally different time frame, but what is the likelihood of that? Very slim.
It looks like the 20s de Nogales.
Looks like I think she says a 2111 or 1211. And when you look up the code for that, that's a break-in. Okay, so it must be tied to this event. They don't give us a date, so we're just trying to piecemeal it together.
It could be a Honda Accord.
Order 94.
594.
So you have over the dispatch, there's some people dealing with a Honda Accord, but then this call is coming in regards to perhaps Nancy Guthrie, and they're trying to deal with both at the same time. Okay, so check it out. It's going to become clear.
We're on the phone with the comp. She's saying that through the cameras,
it sounds like we're on the phone with a comp or a cop. It might be an abbreviated word for the person that's calling in. I can't decipher what that word is, but they're on the phone, what we assume to be maybe Annie Guthrie. We don't know for sure, but it seems that way.
Suspects went in through the back.
Suspects went in through the back door. Okay. All right. Suspects went through the back door. We've been trying to figure out what door did the people go into. Now, this still could be inaccurate because the police hasn't officially said it, but obviously it seems like she has access to the video, her mother's video. Watch.
The cameras were working as soon as
The cameras were working. So she says the suspects went through the back. The cameras were working. So we could rightly assume that if this is Annie Guthrie, that she's actually seeing, she happens to go into her mother's ring, or whatever you want to call it, nest, and she's saying that, okay, we saw the suspects go through the back, then the cameras stopped working. Makes sense, right? It ties into what we've heard.
They got inside.
They got inside. Okay. All right. So the individuals got
The
inside.
camera stopped working.
The camera stopped working. See that? So she hasn't went into the property based on what's going to be said next. It seems like they got to the property. They know she's missing. Perhaps they saw the blood at the front door. And while they're riding over, maybe they're checking her camera. Okay. Person got into the back. Now the camera stopped working. A lot of people are saying that a jammer, right? A Wi-Fi jammer was used. But we do know also simultaneously, we've heard that at 147 that the camera was disconnected. Okay, whether that's a jammer or once the person got into the property, they figured out a way to disconnect the internet of some sort. Okay, we don't know.
Unknown if they're still inside.
Okay, so she don't know if they're still inside. So that makes you feel like, okay, you've gotten to the house. The reason they don't know that if the person is still in the house with their mother is because they haven't went inside. So it's starting to seem like this is all tight based on the fact that they mentioned the Guthries in this call, right? And the way that everything is starting to jive together.
Comp does want us to check the interior if we are able to.
Okay, so the family wants the police to check the interior. Okay, that makes sense.
We need to make sure that the daughter is.
Okay, and she says we want to make sure that the daughter, and for some reason this cuts off. So this is just a little bit of information. If it does pertain to Nancy Guthrie, then it would further build on the concept that whoever went into the property went in through the back door. And the fact that they're pointing to a camera makes you think that perhaps there's camera footage of someone going through the back door, although we don't know that for sure, and we haven't heard that from the officials. This little snippet came out, and so I'm just addressing it. And if it is attached to the situation, then it kind of gives us more of an idea. Now, something to keep in mind is that the authorities came out last week, and basically they said that they had video of the back of the property, right? And that they show individuals at her property before the incident and after, but then they said they do not have anything of that night, any camera footage of the back. So that would make us wonder about all of this. But because this was released, I wanted to share it with you. It's just another piece of the puzzle that you could put into the peripheral to try to figure out, what's really happening here. I see there's a lot of comments rolling through. I'm going to try to address that before we move on to our typical news at noon show. Okay, great. We have a lot of people here. All right, Pretty Things is in the building. Shout out to you. Okay, you're freezing, Michonne, out there in Texas. Okay, let's see here. Brittany's in the building. Brittany says, hello, Mel. Sir, God bless you. Much love and respect to you and everyone. I have a blessed, beautiful Monday. Thank you very much for your comment. Tell me what you think in regards to this dispatch call that came in to 911. Does it seem like it's associated with Nancy Guthrie the way that it appears? Just give me your opinion. We have Jay May says, am I the bad person, but I never cared about the Guthries lady? No, you're entitled to that. Not everybody's really interested in the case. When I was out there, boots on the ground, the first day when I went out to ask 10 people about the case, 7 individuals didn't even know anything about Nancy Guthrie and her daughter, none of the above. The next day, and each day that I was there, most of the people had no clue about the case and they lived right there. And I was actually 2 miles away when I would ask these questions. So a lot of people, they don't have a clue about the case, and some people could care less. We see that from some of the neighbors putting up signs saying, media, go away, let us figure this out. And that eventually happened. In fact, today, I think that all the media is gone from this case. Mashona says it appears to be associated. I agree with you, Mashona. Lori says it's very interesting news. Okay, we have Deborah in the building. Okay, thank you, Uncommon Woman. Thank you guys for all the support. So now we're going to move on and get to our regular show. I just wanted to share that with you. We're going to do a deep dive later on tonight, getting into some of these points at a higher level. But now we're going to take a look at gas prices. Gas prices are through the roof in certain cases, in certain places. Let's take a look at it.
Iran has sent gas prices soaring nationwide.
But it's been even worse right here in Southern California. It always is. CBS LA's Lisa Martinez is live at a gas station downtown where the price has topped $8 this.
$8 a gallon. What in the world is going on? Guys, put a 1 in the chat before we move on. Put a 1 in the chat if you think that call was associated with this whole kidnapping or whatever happened to Nancy Guthrie. Put a 2 if you think it doesn't, or put a 3 if you just don't know. So let's see what everybody has to say in regards to the snippet that I played from the dispatch call, which many feel is associated with that night, that incident.
Morning. Elise, that's rough.
Good morning to you both. Yes, it's pretty much a jump scare anytime you drive by a gas station since the war broke out in Iran about 2 weeks ago. We're here at the Chevron, $8.71. Take a look at that.
$8.71. How in the world can you afford that? Even if it's temporary, it's going to be a temporary pain, but we don't know how long this could drag out. But people are feeling the heat when it comes to gas prices.
Although this gas station does price higher, at least $2 to $3 higher than other stations in the area, I guess they can get away with that. But let's take a look at what's going on nationwide. According to AAA, the average is $3.67. To compare California, what we're paying, $5.
So $3.68 is still lower than when Joe Biden left office. We keep that in mind.
48 cents. That's a whopping $1.81 more per gallon. Let's take a look at locally, LA and Long Beach. We're paying $5.56 on average today. Yesterday it was $5.45, jumping up 11 cents. Last month, only $4.60. Those were the good old.
I want you guys to tell us in the audience, how can you manage to survive the typical person? A lot of people are already living from paycheck to paycheck. So when you add, when gas is like $2 to $3 a gallon, and now you're up to $8, almost $9 a gallon, how are people supposed to survive? What does that look like in trying to probably have to choose between food and also travel at times? And what does that do for the airplanes and all of the trains, what about for heating and all of these type of situations that we deal with in life, right?
Days, right? 96 cents higher today. Well, the war in Iran is disrupting oil shipments. That's raising prices on gas and other items as well. We always ask, why does California get hit harder than the rest? Well, we have stricter.
Jay May says, I'm so broke, I can't pay attention. Thank you very much. A lot of people, actually, that's their reality. You know, whether we know that or not, a lot of people are struggling. And that's how, while here in New York, when I talk to the homeless people sometimes and I say, hey, how did you get into this situation? Usually it's something to do with finances, typically after maybe a health incident or going through a divorce. But money is a key factor. And once you get out there on the streets, it's tough for people to turn their lives around.
Rules for cleaner burning gas blends and higher taxes as well. Plus, our supply is low. We have our own issues there. The average in California right now, $5.48. Yesterday, $5.41. Last month, $4.57, up 91 cents. Well, now, in a controversial move to offset this, President Trump signed an executive order to demand the resumption of offshore oil drilling along the California coast at the site of a devastating oil spill back.
So the president is trying to take some steps to turn this around. We'll see how that works out.
In 2015, he's invoking the emergency powers under the Defense Production Act, allowing the Department of Energy to restore operations at a Santa Ynez pipeline along the Santa Barbara coast. You may remember back in 2015, there was a massive oil spill dumping more than 100.
Guys, we have one here from Marsha says, the real question, if America doesn't win, what happens? That's a very important question. Right now, everybody's hoping and gearing up that America does win. But I guess a lot of it boils down to the Strait of Hormuz, right? And whether or not the Iranians can maintain control of that, that could be a big problem. We saw over the weekend where the president was asking other countries to get involved in trying to take control and keeping it under control. But it seems like there's a lot of uncertainty, especially in life right now. Stella says, like, share, and subscribe, and turn on your notifications to be notified for upcoming shows. We thank you very much for that. Okay. We also have, let's see, we have quite a few comments. Lisa says, I'm overwhelmed with all the problems of today. A lot of people feel the same way as you, just trying to navigate and have a decent life for themselves and their family. Jay May says, these prices are going to be the death of America. Let's keep going.
140,000 gallons of oil into one of the West Coast's most biologically diverse areas. I was working in Santa Barbara at the time. I covered that. It was an absolute disaster. Environmental advocates expressing alarm this morning. And here's what Governor Gavin Newsom had to say. Quote, Donald Trump started a war, admitted it would spike gas prices nationwide, and told Americans it was a small price to pay. Now he's using this crisis of his own making to attempt what he's wanted to do for years, open California's coast for his oil industry friends so they can poison our beaches. That wouldn't lower prices by a cent. And that is likely true. It won't.
Okay, we have Linda. Linda says, if it wasn't for Trump, we wouldn't be in this mess. Okay, thank you guys for all the comments. Brian says, we people need help, not Iran. Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to keep our eyes focused, peeled to see what happens when it comes to gas prices. But this could be a major problem because it's just getting started. So where will these prices end? We're going to have to wait to see. Now, we had this big activity that's happening in the Middle East. Okay, during Joe Biden's 4 years as president, how many terror attacks or issues did we have? Can you take a wild guess within the comment section? Tell us how many attacks did we have? And then also want to ask you, how many attacks have we had in the last week alone? How many attacks? Well, we're going to look at one of these attacks we had in Michigan last week. Let's check it out. And I want you to keep in mind, I want you to notice how this is connected to the conflict. A lot of people still do not want to call this a war, okay, even though there's fighting from both sides. So we'll stick with conflict, but notice how this is tied, how the American people are losing their lives and also being jeopardized based on what's happening abroad.
So,
you want some breaking news?
Well, last week, we talked about that synagogue that was in Michigan, about 30 miles away from Dearborn, Michigan, and the guy who is accused of driving his vehicle through that synagogue.
Kathy makes a good point. Kathy says, do you want Iran to have weapons to take this country out? Because I sure don't. I sure don't. I'm definitely with you, Kathy. Thank you for your expression.
Which is also a school and a preschool. Children were there. There were 140 children and teachers who were not injured. But he drives his truck through the school, the synagogue, and he has all these fireworks inside the truck. He had gas jugs, and he exchanged fire with the security guard who was armed. They exchanged fire. The security guard was injured. The man inside the car blew up and was.
These people are in Michigan. They start off their day trying to figure out what the kids are going to eat for breakfast. You know how the morning goes, right? Trying to figure out where they need gas from and acquiring gas, listening to music. Maybe they were checking out Watching the World. I highly doubt it. But at any rate, living their life, not concerned and thinking that something like this could happen in their little local neighborhood. So that's why we have to be so alert. Because even last week, we heard that Iran is seeking to land a solid missile on the West Coast. What does all this mean, right? I was flying to Washington, D.C. over the weekend. They did a ground stop. They said, oh, it's because of a smell and no one can fly in or out of Washington, D.C. So I was stuck in the airport pretty much all day, and I had to go and acquire a hotel room. But at the end of the day, most of the people that I talked to, they felt like it had something to do with what's happening in Iran, right? you could rightly come to that conclusion.
Is on fire. So to prevent burning, the guy shoots himself. So he is dead, but now there are ties to what's happening in Lebanon. We were wondering, we heard.
All right, so pay attention. Here's the key part, right? Notice how this is connected.
He lost his niece and his nephew in Lebanon in a Hezbollah attack. And we were wondering, is that why he did this? Well, now it's being confirmed. He lost his brother, who's a commander over there. He lost another brother. He lost his niece and his nephew on March 5th. And then he goes and does this last Thursday. And he's from Dearborn, Michigan.
So here's an expose from the IDF. Hezbollah commander Abraham Mohammed Ghazi was responsible for managing weapons operations within a specialized branch of the Bandar unit. The unit is responsible for launching hundreds of rockets toward Israeli civilians throughout the war. His brother Ayman Mohammed Ghazi carried out the terror attack in Michigan this past Thursday. Ibrahim was eliminated in an IAF strike.
Yeah, that's right. This is happening in our backyard, right? Sometimes we say, oh, that's happening in the Middle East. You know, what it mean to me, right? But then it comes knocking at your door.
On Hezbollah military structure last week. Okay, so there we go. I mean, was there no vetting done at all before we're giving out citizenship? So we have to stop being so emotional when it comes to this conversation. You got people marching in the middle of the street with flags. They're making posts. They have connections to people that are part of terror organizations in foreign countries. And we're told that we can't have those type of conversations. It's going to get people killed. You can't have false compassion. You have to secure.
Guys, we're open to everyone expressing themselves in the comment section, but we can't have people calling names that are gross and just being outright rude. We also have bots that appear sometimes, so I would like to ask the moderators to please be mindful. Please be respectful of everyone, although you're entitled to your opinion. But I just say, if you want to be rude, just go outside and yell by yourself.
The country first before you start welcoming people in.
So this guy's from Hezbollah, the biggest and maybe the strongest and most pervasive with a global presence, especially in Central South America. So one of the commander's brothers here doing the same thing. As it's reported when this happens, they say, well, Israel's hitting Lebanon, killed one of his brothers, so what do you expect him to do, essentially?
Right.
Like, wait a second. His brother is a Hezbollah commander, and so is this guy. So what are they doing in Dearborn, Michigan, which has been overrun in the Muslim community? Within that community, they have to report some of the terrorists amongst them.
And
right now, if they don't want to be Americans, they shouldn't be there, and people should be able to crack down without being worried about being calling Islamophobes.
the guy was allowed into the United States in 2011. He's the spouse of a U.S. citizen, and he was granted citizenship under Barack Obama's
And of all things, this affects the children. They seem to go after the daycares, they go after the schools. They want to hit you where it really hurts, right?
administration in 2016. This is what the Wall Street Journal says. And keep in mind, we have a partial government shutdown. TSA is not being paid. 300 of them have quit. Our airports, we're all worried now. Are there sleeper cells here in America because of all of the millions, 15 million people that...
Guys, our attorney on deck, James, says it's already happened twice in New York. And I was actually in New York when one of them happened. They went after the mayor's home. And these guys are conjuring up their own little explosives, but these explosives can easily take many lives. So we have to be very alert in this day and time. But the things that are happening, a lot of people are upset because they're saying that, well, this is Israel's war and America is just backing Israel. But yes, all of these things are affecting us in more ways than one.
that Obama's administration let into our country. So there are concerns there. You have this guy living in Dearborn, Michigan, married to an American citizen. And this is what the Wall Street Journal says. Western counterterrorism operated for decades on a simple premise. Threats came from somewhere else. They crossed borders. That premise is no longer holding. The days since the Iran...
And do not get it twisted. Don't allow the media to persuade you to think that Iran should not be dealt with. A lot of these different countries in the world, and I broke it down last night in my members chat or whatever you want to call it, how a lot of it stems from their belief system, which is associated to how they see their God, okay? Let's not walk and tread lightly around that thought. So you're not going to be able to change a person's religion or their concept, because a lot of their belief systems come from ancient books, and in those books it talks about Armageddon. Remember, 2 weeks ago, the military here in the United States was telling the troops about Armageddon. Well, that's typically a religious war, right, that you read about in the Bible and in the book of Revelation. But these things are starting to happen, and people are trying to tie it to Bible prophecy because this is embedded in their belief system. So they're trying to trigger, right? And even when it comes to Islam, a lot of these individuals, they are hell bent on destruction, because destruction has to happen first before they'll see their whatever that heaven's going to be, or some paradise on earth, or if they're going to have this new kingdom. The death and destruction comes first, according to the holy book. So all of this is affecting our lives, whether you believe in these concepts or not. You still have to swallow all of the hatred that's being spewed out today. It's so sad. But the United States has to address these issues. Somebody has to address the hatred, because these individuals are just on a road to taking out as many people as possible, and that's a fact.
War began, have seen at least 4 apparent terrorist attacks in the U.S., 2 of them last Thursday. Federal agencies now warn that lone actor violence may be among the hardest threats to detect. The ideology no longer needs.
You hear that? The ideology is something else. Tara makes a good point. She says America killed 150 plus schoolgirls on day 1 of the Iran war. And the president of the United States was questioned about that. And basically, him as well as Pete Hegseth, they said they would have to do more research on the matter, but they did not fully claim whether it happened by accident or what have you. But that's a narrative that's being pushed. And it's those type of narratives where people are really pushing back against actions of war or the conflicts we see in the Middle East.
Territory, command structures, or training camps. It travels easily, moving through digital networks and personal grievances. That makes it far harder to trace. The challenge facing Western governments today is therefore not a rebuilt caliphate abroad. It is radicalization unfolding quietly inside our own societies. If that remains unaddressed, the pattern in West Bloomfield, Norfolk, New York, and Austin will keep repeating itself.
A lot of people are really putting the heat to Democrats today. Michelle says it should be illegal for the Democrats or any party to shut down any part of DHS, period. All right, thank you.
One lone actor at a time.
You know why it's so hard to detect? You know, for one of my degrees in Homeland Security, you research terrorists and what they believe. And you start to look at their motivations.
Dennis says maybe the U.S. should stop making the world hate Americans. I appreciate all the comments that are rolling in. So thank you very much. Man, we have some strong words going back and forth. I'd like to say, please, if we could cool it down a bit, though. I understand the frustration, but some of this is quite aggressive.
And you look at the modern day progressives that are protesting in the middle of the street, it sounds about the same. The modern day, the Free Palestine crowd and all that. I mean, when you have Americans that they don't know about 9/11, they didn't grow up in that era, they don't understand the panic. So we're raising kids to have anti-Western, anti-American values.
I just want to explain something to you guys. If you notice, you'll see 2 live streams. The reason why we have 2 live streams going is because the vertical is for your cell phone, and that's the stream that most people watch. I just like for you to hit the thumbs up, hit the like button. It helps push the channel. But for those that like to watch this on their television, laptop, computers, what have you, then we have the horizontal stream going. So it's deliberate, but it's trying to accommodate everyone that wants to watch the show. But I'd like to ask you, even if you watch on the vertical cell phone, if you could give a like to both streams, if it's possible for you to do so and you appreciate the show. Thank you very much.
Anti-military, nothing about it. It's offensive to have the American flag in front of your yard and all that. That same ideology is what the Iranian radicals believe, is what the radical Islamists believe. And so now it's been blended in, and we can't separate who is just a progressive or who is a radical Islamist. And that's dangerous.
Well, if Iran came to power.
Guys, Pat says 80% of the Iranian people want regime change. Thank you.
These radicals came to power by combining with communists, and they had the one thing in common. They wanted to make sure the West was neutralized and thought we were the biggest threat to them. So Khomeini comes to power pretending to be someone who's going to bring some type of equality to Iran. He ends up being a total fraud, like Fidel Castro did the same thing. But they see a commonality between.
So there's so much happening in the world. We're going to keep covering this every day. You can come back for news at noon, every day at noon. Tomorrow, I will be in court in association with Sean Diddy Combs' case. They might be particularly prosecuting another individual. We have to go and take a look at that. But at any rate, we will be news at noon each day, Eastern Standard Time. Also, we have typical shows where we do deep dives at nighttime, so you could tune in for that. Now we're going to take a look at perhaps what happened to the supreme ruler. He lost his life, and his son filled in that void. He became the new leader. Well, it looks like the United States smoked him too, and he might not exist anymore. But keep in mind, even if he does take the reins of his father, that this same son, he lost his wife too. So trying to get him to a point of being peaceable with all men or the United States or Israel, I just can't see it happening, right? So let's take a look at this.
And let's get straight into Operation Epic Fury. Israel says they expect the fighting to last at least 3 more weeks as Iran ramps up retaliatory strikes on its neighbors.
So let's make a note of that. In 3 weeks, we're going to see if this is still going and if it's another 3 weeks or if there's no end in sight, okay?
Neighbors in the region.
Let's go to Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yinks. He's live from Tel Aviv with the latest. Good morning, Trey.
Guys, put a 1 in the chat if you truly believe that this is temporary, okay? But put a 2 if you think this is a war and it could go on for a long time. A 1 or a 2. Tell us how you feel.
Yeah, hey, Lawrence, good morning. The Israelis and the Americans are going after new targets today across Iran, striking the capital city of Tehran and a variety of positions in western Iran. They're putting new pressure on the regime, and we heard from U.S. Central Command this morning who indicated that more than 100 Iranian Navy vessels have been taken out since Operation Epic Fury began just over 2 weeks ago. Into the 3rd week of this operation, you can see some video here from the Iranian capital overnight. Black smoke rising from the horizon after a significant strike there. Again, not only the
So far, most people feel like this war is going to continue on for an extensive amount of time.
The storage facilities of Iranian missiles are being targeted, but also the production lines to prevent the Iranian regime from rearming. As these strikes continue, they are expected to intensify in the hours and days ahead. International focus does remain on the Strait of Hormuz, where the Trump administration has indicated they're calling on other countries around the world to...
Guys, take a moment, hit the like button, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications, but also if you could hit the little hearts at the bottom of you probably will find it in your chat station. If you could just hit that to support the channel, help us grow, we really do appreciate that.
Participate in pressuring the Iranians and allowing the safe passage.
Deborah says, we're in a whole messy. What the hell, right?
Vessels. This is where 20% of the world's oil passes through on a regular basis. President Trump was asked this weekend about that possible coalition.
Talking to countries about policing the straits, because they are the ones, we don't get oil, very little, 1%, 2%. But China, as an example, gets about 90% of its oil from the Hormuz Strait. Nice to have
Now, guys, keep in mind that this strait is 500 by 200. That's a large strait. And if the Iranians keep control of it, then essentially the United States haven't won, right? So the idea here is for the United States to dominate. We're going to get into it in our next video and see how America is basically smoking the hills of Iran. Even though a lot of the media try to paint a different narrative, they are dropping so many explosives, you won't even believe it. But let's listen to the president some more.
other countries police that with us, and we'll help, we'll work militarily.
As the United States and Israel put this pressure on Iran, there are still ongoing attacks against Israel and Gulf countries. There are far fewer due to the fact they've been quite successful in hitting the launching positions of these ballistic missiles. There was a number of impacts in Israel on Sunday. You can see in this aftermath video here the result of a cluster munition that wasn't launched.
Okay, I see that Lisa says, question, how do I like the X stream? Now, the X stream, that's different. I forgot all about that. And I want to give a shout out to all the people that are watching on X. Okay, we have close to 200 people. We'd like to encourage you guys to hit the like button, share, and subscribe too. On X, it's called Watching the World 777. But also, if you're watching on X, you could come over with the YouTube family and watch us at Watching the World 777. And we have 2 streams on YouTube. We're also going to be branching out to other different social media as well. But thank you guys for all the support. We do this every day.
Toward a military target, but
and by the way, tonight at 8 p.m., we're going to do a deep dive into Nancy Guthrie. We're also going to look into Tucker Carlson and why he might be facing some jail time for opposing the war and being verbal about it, and how that ties into the CIA and the Department of Justice looking to cook his heels too.
Rather the civilians of Tel Aviv. The Iranians still talking tough, and we heard this weekend from Iran's foreign minister who said this.
I think our armed forces have already answered that they would retaliate if our oil and energy infrastructure are attacked. And they will attack any energy infrastructure in the region which belongs to an American
Rhonda says the war was not authorized by Congress. Thank you, Rhonda.
company or an American company is a shareholder. So the reaction would be clear.
The reality is the Iranians are already targeting civilian infrastructure all around the Gulf. But as this is taking place,
yeah, they're absolutely hitting other countries that have Americans there. At least that's what the excuse is. But continually, we have seen rounds in Dubai. We've seen them in India. A lot of different places are really taking on the heat. And still, we still have individuals from America who are still trapped in these countries trying to get back home from what was thought of just to be a vacation, but they did not receive a warning about all of this. So they did not get out of town or get out of that said country time to, before all this happened.
the Israelis are looking to the east, but also to the north, to the Iran-backed Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. You can see some strikes here that took place in the aftermath in the Dakhia neighborhood of southern Beirut. We also learned overnight Israel has formally now launched a ground operation into southern Lebanon to bring the fight against Hezbollah. This is described to Fox News as a limited operation at this point. Reports do indicate hundreds of thousands of Israeli reservists could be called up in the event of an expanded maneuver. Guys?
So far, Hamas is staying out of it, even saying some things that that they're distancing from the war specifically, right?
Yes, specifically. But now we're going to specifically take a look at some of the strikes that the United States has bombarded Iran with, and it gives you an idea of how effective the United States can be when it comes to war. So let's check that out now. Thank you. So you see some of those strikes that are occurring. Look at this here. They're just blowing the aircraft to smithereens, right? Look how effective the United States is. And they're doing this all over the place in Iran and pretty much any other country that goes against whatever the American agenda is. So you see the effectiveness, even though it is, they say it's not war. I don't know how it's not. But just take a look at how effective. Moving target, not anymore. You see that? So this is all unclassified, that they're trying to get the narrative out to show that the United States is strong and able to execute these particular actions. But the sad part is a lot of people are talking about what happened to the young girls in the school. We hear about that every day in the chat. Everybody's speaking about that. And speaking of young girls, we're going to take a look now at how they recovered so many missing children. Let's take a look at this story.
It's an everyday battle. This is a massive problem that we have, not just in California, but our entire country.
Well, dozens of missing children from all across Southern California are safe tonight after what authorities say was a major crackdown.
Guys, today the chat, I haven't seen such fighting in the chat before. I'm not sure what triggered it today. We're just covering what happened in regards to this war or conflict that's happening. Now we're having a conflict in the chat. My.
And the fight against human trafficking. We learned all of the children have ties to Riverside County. NBC4's Christian Casada spoke with the
Welcome back to Country Carpenter. Thank you for supporting me so much. I appreciate you.
sheriff about the rescues and how the public's help can really make a difference.
That's right. Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco tells us this was a week-long operation called Safe Return, where he says it was.
Hey, Desiree, what's happening?
It was both federal and state partners coming together because, according to the sheriff, he says this operation was just too big.
In the end, it came down to we knew that we had to.
Guys, could we take a moment and get the likes up? It's very important. I'm on the road to the White House. It's very important for me to get the White House access. And with that, we need numbers and we need strong support. So let's just show that we do have strong support. Thank you.
To get help because we didn't have enough personnel to hit this many locations at the same time all throughout Southern California. All of the kids had something to do with Riverside County. They were missing from Riverside County.
More than 50 missing.
Who's taking all the children? So lately, we've been covering Nancy Guthrie, how she's missing at 84 years old. And did you guys hear about William Neal McCaslin? He was 4 years older than Nancy Guthrie. He's out of Albuquerque, I believe, New Mexico. Both of them live right by the border. Is this something that's bigger than what we thought? Are these stories connected? Were they taken by the same individuals? All of that and more we're trying to figure out. But in this case, you saw how all of these children were taken, so many parents trying to figure out what happened to the kids. But we're happy that they were recovered. But in many cases, the children are not recovered. Or even the elderly people are not recovered, right? So it goes to show while you're living your normal life and trying to succeed, there are other people looking to destroy you.
Minors were identified and 37 of them were rescued. 10 people were arrested. And according to the sheriff, there are no pictures, no video of this operation because of the sensitivity of the crime. But the sheriff tells me that all of these missing children, they were found in Northern California, Nevada, and Arizona.
So the way human trafficking.
So you got missing kids out there somewhere, and that's probably in every state, but they're just out there. Where are these kids at? What are they doing? What's the motive? Why are people in our country and around the world so cruel?
Works and why we're unique is, I don't want to say it's easy to locate in other places, but in the prostitution realm, in the human trafficking, the sex trafficking realm, there are things called blades. And a blade is like Figueroa Street in Los Angeles. We don't have one. So that's what makes it unique for us. We don't have.
Roadrunner is just like Whitney Houston. Roadrunner says the kids are our future. Whitney Houston says, I believe that children are our future, right? Thank you for that great comment. Pat says, the enemy is always around you. Wouldn't you believe? They say every time you go to the grocery store, you're probably rubbing shoulders around someone that has committed a severe crime. Isn't that something? Just one little trip to Walmart.
One of those locations. Our sex trafficking is through hotels or events or
Carpe Diem, I went to the Alexander Brothers trial. You said, are the Alexander Brothers locked up yet? No, they're lined up for sentencing. Many people feel like they're going to receive life in prison. So we'll have to report when the actual sentencing happened and how that turns out. We have a lot of cases coming up. Guys, for those of you that are new here today, I go to the courthouse here in New York to cover the federal cases such as Sean Diddy Combs. I covered Donald Trump. He received 34 felonies. We have Luigi Mangione. He has a state trial and he has a federal. We also have Nicolas Maduro coming up on the 26th of this month. I'll be in court to cover his next court date. So the list goes on with all of these cases. Now, keep in mind, they do not allow cameras inside the courthouse, right? Especially for federal. So that's why it's important for us to attend. We sit in court all day, take good notes, and come back and try to help you understand how this works. Now, when I covered Sean Diddy Combs' case for 9 weeks, I was able to explain to Calvin Johnson, our criminal defense attorney, basically all the things that happened. And based on that, he was able to guess or determine ahead of time how much time Sean Diddy Combs would receive. And he was only off by 1 month. And to me, that's not being off at all. To me, that's right on target. Based on what a lot of people say, we have professionals here at our channel that we keep on deck, right? So that we can actually give you guys some solid information about the cases. And also, I cover true crime. So I'll be boots on the ground. Nancy Guthrie. I'll be going over to cover William McCaslin's case out in Albuquerque. So I have a lot of traveling coming up as well. But I thank you guys for all the support, especially liking, sharing, subscribing. Thank you very much.
Things like that. Apps online.
On average, the department says about 6,000 children in the county go missing every.
Claim I'm really on standby. I have my things all packed and I'm ready to go back to Tucson. So I'm just waiting. I'm trying to line up an interview with the sheriff while I'm there. I think it would definitely add to my next trip out there, my next stay. So we'll see how that develops. But yes, I'll be headed back to Tucson. This time when I go, I'll be better prepared. I'll probably be there longer, but more of an investigative type of deal. But let's see how that all turns out. Hopefully I can get the sheriff. I've been given so many different requests. Maybe perhaps he'll give me an opportunity.
Every year, the majority of them return home safe, even those connected to human trafficking cases, according to the sheriff, all thanks to the.
So what's the moral of the story here? Keep your eyes on your children. Make sure you have all the technology in place to stay ahead of the curve. Unlike in the case of Nancy Guthrie, make sure that your Nest and your Ring cameras or whatever you have, make sure you have the subscription ready and available and working. Make sure you have extra cameras and also be very observant even while you're in home in the comfort of your own bed, because there's always someone else thinking about you, even when you may not be paying attention to yourself. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, you have to look out for yourself, because in many cases, others will not. Now we're going to take a look at what's happening down in Florida. It looks like Cuba, Donald Trump. I think what happened in America, we forgot about the history of life. And when you go back in time, most countries have been about conquering and taking over other places. We're starting to see some of that type of activity, and people are saying, oh my God, what is the president doing? But in actuality, history is just repeating itself, because look at Cuba and look at what we know about Cuba from the past. And now Donald Trump is putting them on notice that perhaps he's going to be running the show, right? And look what happens. He has Cuba, who is now coming to the table trying to make a deal. Let's get to this and see what's happening, all right? Hit the like button, share, and subscribe.
Now at 5:30, Cuba's leader confirming talks with the Trump administration, raising hopes for a deal with the U.S. Miguel Diaz-Canel, however, warning any political agreement is still in the early.
Let me tell you guys what I was telling one of my moderators, Stella, right? And this is very important that you understand this. The United States, namely Donald Trump is like a president we haven't seen before. Whether you like him or not, the guy seems to be operating above Congress, above the judges. He's just above, but he has a lot of people really backing him. And then he has a lot of people who silently say they don't like the guy, but I think on the low, they might like the president, and they don't like it to hear people like me saying it, but it's the truth, right? So with that being said, the other nations' leaders, they start to see that Donald Trump is taking over in other places. It makes it very uncomfortable for the presidents of other countries to sleep at night. And the reason why, I was actually in court with Nicolas Maduro when he came to New York for the first time. I was sitting in court and I heard the chains as they released it from his arms. You could hear the chains hit the ground, right? And he walked out into the courtroom, and even though he appeared happy, saying, Happy New Year, Happy New Year, he was saying that to some of us, myself included. I found that to be quite strange, to have a president looking at me from another country saying Happy New Year. but he said it to 4 of us sitting together. Okay. He looked like he knew exactly what he wanted to do. Now, he's a president of Venezuela. He came into the courtroom along with his wife. And when the judge was asking him any question, the first thing he would say, they came into my home on Saturday night and kidnapped me. He kept saying that every chance he got because he's trying to persuade the audience. He's trying to get the word out that the United States kidnapped him. He's not a baby. This is a man that has risen to the heights of a president of another country. Simultaneously, at the same time, the Colombian president, right? He was talking about the same thing. Oh, the United States won't do anything to me. I'm strong, right? But after he saw the heat come on Nicolas Maduro, the next thing you know, the president from Colombia was sitting in the White House making a deal with Trump. Cuba, of all places, have always been very resistant. But look at what's happening here in this video. So the president of the United States, he's so unpredictable that he has other leaders hoping that the United States military don't pull up on them in the middle of the night.
Early stages. And good evening, I'm Jim Barry.
And I'm Naja Sherman. Diaz-Canel making that announcement in a video broadcast on national television. Diaz-Canel said negotiations between governments often take place quietly and require time to develop. He also acknowledged that Cuba is facing a severe fuel shortage and it is affecting everyday life across the island. He said the government will continue to keep the public informed about developments related to the talks and the country's ongoing challenges.
Meantime, Cubans in South Florida and in Washington are skeptical about negotiations with the Cuban government.
CBS News Miami's Nakaya.
Now, let me tell you guys another thing that I noticed. One of the things that came out actually even in court, when this happened in Venezuela, guess who was there, boots on the ground, working with Venezuela? You had Russia, you also had China. But yet the United States came in, took out, I believe, 32 of the individuals that were protecting Nicolas Maduro. Now, keep in mind, Nicolas Maduro had Cuban soldiers protecting him. And the word on the street is because he didn't trust his own people in the country to protect him. But he had Russia and China for support. Now look at Iran, right? Who do they have in the background? Who supports them? They have Russia and China. But look, the United States is having their way with Iran, right? So it gives you an idea of where we're headed as the United States, and other places are getting conquered right before our very eyes.
Carrera is your reporter in Little Havana with more of those concerns. Nakaya.
That's right. Cuban Americans have been reacting to the announcement from the Cuban leader about him releasing political prisoners and being in talks with the United States government all
Jazzy says Iran will never give up. Great comment. Thank you.
day long. Well, I spoke with Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar and Congressman Carlos Jimenez, who says they aren't buying what he's selling. Now, both representatives who are Cuban Americans say Diaz-Canel spoke out as a last-ditch effort to stay in power. They also said Cubans on the island are suffering at the hands of the regime. People are starving and lacking medicine and dealing with blackouts. I asked about their involvement in conversations about Cuba, and they say Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been leading the charge and handling the talks very well.
Okay, Johnny Boy says Democrats will protest helping Cuba as they did with Maduro and that animal. Okay, thank you very much.
Both saying today's announcements shows the regime's days are numbered.
This announcement is all smoke and mirrors. All they're trying to do is buy time because they want to preserve the power, because they're in the business of power. But they have not understood.
That power would not hold up under Donald Trump. I'm going to tell you that right now. I know people don't want to hear it, but they'll probably get one warning. And then after that, the deal is going to get worse than before.
That Trump is doing what JFK never did 60 years ago.
This is what they do. They make some grand gesture or a little gesture and say, oh, look, we're changing. They're not changing.
I'll tell you guys briefly what I believe. I believe that when Donald Trump lost the election to Joe Biden, I think he spent 4 years coming up with this dominant plan of what's going to happen when I take over office again. That's why when he came back in this time, they were knocking out stuff on first week and getting rid of people, firing. They had a whole plan, whereas the first time around, he had to come into government and learn his way around. So we're starting to see uncharted waters because we see the president of the United States really making changes that most people don't understand.
51 political prisoners out of 1,400, that's not a change.
So I'm going to keep you guys in the loop when it comes to Cuba, but it looks like they are hard pressed and they have to submit to whatever the United States has to say, or they're going to have a situation similar to Venezuela and Iran, or something that they don't want to actually have to face. I just want to lightly touch on this next story. I'm going to get into it tonight, but I want to give you guys an idea of what we're going to talk about in regards to Tucker Carlson. Check out how he might be facing the heat too.
So the other day I found out that the CIA is preparing some kind of criminal referral against me, a crime report to the Department of Justice on the basis of a supposed crime I committed. What's that crime? Well, talking to people in Iran before the war.
Okay, so we have another Don Lemon situation at hand where individuals that talk about the president, the administration a lot, now they're facing the heat mysteriously, right? Check it out.
They read my texts. So the crime under consideration apparently would be the Foreign Agent Act or something like that, acting as an agent of a foreign power.
Tucker Carlson just exposed the sinister DOJ and CIA plot to charge him with absurd crimes, that he was acting as a foreign agent by conversing as an American journalist with people within Iran under this fervor of war propaganda. What does this mean? Is there a crackdown coming on civil liberties? Will it pan out in actual charges or an arrest of the most
So tonight we're going to really get into it deeply, talking about Tucker Carlson and the heat that he might be facing. Now, here's the tough thing about it. I want to touch on this. I'm going to go back and play that first video from Nancy Guthrie. For those that are here that are interested in learning more about Nancy Guthrie, I'm going to play the snippet from a dispatch call that came in regards to her case. It seems like it's accurate, and if it's accurate, the family felt that the person came in through the back door. And this is the first time I've had a chance to perhaps understand how the person entered her home. Based on the snippet, it appeared that the daughter had some sort of video, perhaps from the back door. And it also insinuates, that's if the video is true, that the daughter had access to the mother's camera. Now, does that mean she saw it in the middle of the night? Probably not. I think a lot of people on a sleepy night, or you get so used to your Ring camera going off, when it buzzes, you just become accustomed to ignoring it. But sometimes it could cost you dearly. So we're going to get into this snippet one more time. Tonight, I'm going to break it down. I'm also going to show you guys how I feel a second person was involved, okay? A second person. I'm going to show you that there's some lighting. I showed it before, but this time I'm going to show you even further how you could actually see there's a light behind the individual after he tries to cover up the camera with some sort of plants, okay? We're going to get into that and more. It's very important, though, if you guys could try to get along. I just want to make this statement before we close out. This channel is not defined by a party, okay? So we're not big on Republican, Democrat, or Independent. Oh, what does that mean? That means that if the Republicans do something bad, then I can call it out, right? And that might be different from your bad, because all of us are basing our perspective on life according to our experiences. Some things that are illegal in the United States are legal in other places, okay? That's why you find some guys have 6 and 7 wives. You try to pull that off in the United States, you have another thing coming, okay? So you with me? If there's something good happening from the Republican president, you could say, oh, yeah, that's good, right? I'm glad the border is being more restrictive because we have all these people coming in. Now we have these cells, right? Guys looking to cause destruction. We don't even know where they are. And a lot of them came in through the border, okay? We could look at the Democrats and say, oh, that's a bad deal. No, no, no. Oh, they did a good thing, right? We reserve the right as humans. But a lot of times people become so committed to their party, they can't even say this president is wrong because they feel something inside that says, oh, if I say that Donald Trump did something wrong, then I don't look like a true MAGA. I don't represent the red. You follow? Or Joe Biden. Joe Biden has an automated pen. Oh, I can't talk about that because then it makes it appear that I'm not a good Democrat. So that's why we try to move with intelligence. And with that being said, you can sleep good at night because even you tell your children right and wrong really doesn't change a lot, right? And you have people on the left and right. We're all trying to navigate life, but right and wrong falls on both sides of the aisle or whatever side you identify with, okay? Even if you identify as being a mushroom, God bless you. Look at your neighbor, say, neighbor, be a mushroom, okay? But the idea here, we get people that are on the left, on the right, black and white, rich and poor, Israelite versus Islam, New York versus Dallas. You see how this works? So by the end of the day, by the time you try to figure out where you're supposed to stand, each of those boxes, they come with a certain mentality and a certain frame of mind. So immediately when I put on my New York hat, right? It puts me in a box. Oh, this guy's a New Yorker. He's a fast talker. He's shucking and jiving. And it goes on, right? This is just how we navigate. It's a human nature to try to put everybody in a box because once you put someone in a box, if you have oranges and apples, when you make the determination that this is an apple, you put it in a box, you no longer try to understand it because guess what? It's an apple. And you know what an apple does, right? If it's an orange, it goes in this box. So we have to pull ourselves into more of an independent type of thinking. And whoever's doing the righteous thing at the time would get your vote, right? You're just not committed to some ideology to where, think about these individuals that are willing to just blow up things just because of some ideology that they grew up learning. So now they'll take out however many people. How can you fight a country where the people you've taken out their Ayatollah, he's the next thing to God. These people will be fighting you. Their grandkids will be fighting you to kingdom come. That's just how life works, right? But we do have an opportunity, especially I can speak because I'm in the Americas. We do have things a little bit different to where we have our freedom of speech. Some of that might be tampering with, right? But even in the chat, we could try to find a way to try to not disrespect people who don't want to be disrespected, right? If I wanted to come to your house, like in the case of Nancy Guthrie, the person, she didn't welcome them in her home. They came in and they took her out, right? People are at a point in life now, these court cases that I cover, a lot of the women, they don't even get to express their right to have a man do things with them. These men are just taking control of another person's body. How insane is that, right? Like, where's your father at? Because typically a father wouldn't allow this to happen to their daughter. Like, what's really going on? But it happens also mentally. We don't ask people, are you in a mood to hear about what I'm going through right now? Maybe that person's having the best day of their life, right? But just because we're going through something, sometimes we don't ask for emotional consent. And that's very important in life. And so in the chat, day in, day out from even in my travels, people are so dominant when it comes to crowding other people's spaces. They come into the chat calling names. And they don't care if it's a woman, a child, they do not care. Sometimes I wonder, is it a human at all? And if it is a human, what caused you to be so miserable in life that you want to go around parading your little sassiness and your little miserable head on everybody else in the chat or everybody else you come in contact with, right? But this is where we are, and that's why we have all these atrocious things happening. We try to cover it here, and when I tell you to go to court and have to hear woman after woman come in, and check this out, it's the popular opinion of many people to say, at least in the church environment, I don't have to deal with that. Well, guess what? We have a new case in New York City. James will tell you he's a former pastor, no different than what they tried to say about the Alexander brothers. His trial is coming up. He's already received 16 years out of California. Guess what he's accused of? Apart from the fraud and all the other stuff, taking advantage of young kids. So imagine you have to sit in a trial day in, day out. Here comes the next victim talking about how they were just living their best life. And here comes a monster pastor. Yeah, I said pastor, right? Look at your neighbor, said, neighbor, we're talking about the pastor. You damn right. So what I'm trying to say is we have in these court cases, Sean Diddy Combs, Cassie, Jane Doe, and they tell you these horrible stories of how they were manipulated and these things happened to him. And most of the time, people don't even want to hear from the victim. And guess what they say, right? Now, each victim have their own story. We do know that in many cases, people make things up. But for the most part, we try to tell a victim how they're supposed to feel. It's insanity, right? We really need to find a better way. I say all of that to say, let's try to tone it down in the chat. Let's try to have a different environment. Leave red and your blue at the door. If you want to be a gangster, God bless you, right? But leave that at the door. We want to hear from your intelligence because we all can go left at times, right? I could yell, I could fight. We all have the same capability, but it takes a higher person to operate at a higher level. And that's what we're trying to do here at Watching the World. Thank you guys so much. And I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I'm just trying to say weakness is often shown in the lapse or the low budget thinking, I like to call it. Real low budget thinking. It takes a person that has intelligence to behave at a higher level because sometimes when things happen, we're so used to reacting. We're in the reaction mode, right? Many of us are in the reacting business because that's all we understand. If it's raining outside, right, we're sad, right? But there are some people that carry around their own weather. So it could be raining outside, they're still in a good space because they're not reduced to the environment. So let's try to be better. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'll be back on tonight at 8 p.m. to do a deep dive in some of these subject matters. But until then, I'd like to encourage you to be well. Think about how to protect yourself because it's always at your moment when you're so caught up in life that someone else is revealed to have their eyes on you. We wish we could go back in time with Nancy Guthrie and change the story, right? But that's not how life works. But going forward, you could perhaps reduce your risk by just being more observant. We need to lose the thought process that it would never happen to me because it very well could likely happen to you. So we want everybody to be well and also to look out for other people. We need a better change because let me tell you something right now, and I guarantee you, I had it out with one of my neighbors before, and I ended up having to take the high road. I guess he was having a bad day. I think his wife had cancer. So I showed the guy some love. I was bigger, probably stronger, right? But I took the cool route and we became good friends. And his wife eventually passed from cancer. But I was happy to take that stance, right? It actually worked out for everybody because I'm pretty sure you've seen the show to what is it to love thy neighbor or something where neighbors once they get into it, it's a never ending process, right? So that's all we're trying to say. Let's try to perform at a higher level and getting along with one another despite our belief systems, which a lot of these belief systems are probably hogwash anyway. If we live long enough, you start to realize a lot of things you were taught as a child is just nonsense, right? But life works that way. When you get older and smarter, then you start to realize most of your life is wasted on some philosophy of men that was spread, and you bought it hook, line, and sinker to only find out, guess what? Not even true, right? So thank you very much. Have a good day, and we'll be back tonight at 8. And thank you for all the likes, share, and subscriptions here at Watching the World. We're just trying to be different and not act like coyotes. Thank you.
Different voices, but the same song. Living a world where we all belong. Kindness leading the way, breaking the chains. In the symphony of love, the theme remains. Embracing diversity, brighter days in sight. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. The colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.